And I would now like to introduce today's graduate speaker, Sachet Woolfolk-Mitto.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sachet, and I'm a graduate of the First STEP program, Class 177. I come from humble beginnings, born and raised in Denver, Colorado, the first of 5 children to teenage parents. Some of my first memories are so beautiful and lovely. A big family, singing and dancing, going to church. Then, around the age 11, my life flipped. My parents divorced, and my mother refused to let my father see us. I became a punching bag to my mother and a mother to my younger siblings overnight, it seemed. I even took on a tutoring job to have money for food because our mother had essentially abandoned us. I didn't mind taking care of my siblings, but I became terrified of the nights, unsure of what kind of mother was going to walk through the door. Either she would be so intoxicated, I would have to drag her in the house, or she would come in to wake me with beatings. I ran away multiple times and alerted teachers until all of us children were released into my father's care. But the damage was done, and I was ready to leave home. I found a boyfriend who was a little older than me and moved in with his family. I thought being in a relationship and starting a family would be a new beginning. At the age of 18, I became pregnant. 5 years later, we had our second child. I had put myself into another abusive situation with his controlling family, and I felt like I was stuck. When my youngest was 1, I moved out with my children and rented a room for a few months. Now, I was a single mother of 2, more vulnerable and depressed. I decided to move to New York with my children for a fresh start. On the day we were supposed to leave, my children's father filed for emergency custody to prevent me from taking the children out of state. I felt betrayed and I didn't understand. He hadn't been involved with the children since I moved out. I thought it was a temporary situation, and I had a job and room waiting for me in New York, so I left. It was a decision that I regret to this day. Though I miss my kids, I was excited for a fresh start in New York. I got settled, then I met someone. This person love-bombed me. He gave me all the affection I was so desperately craving. He was very supportive in trying to help me get my children back and wanted to be a family. I moved in with him, and everything seemed so perfect. I thought I was happy. We were together 2 years, and I got pregnant. Then I started to see a change in him. He didn't want me working too much, so he encouraged me to stay home. So I did for 1 year, and then I went back to work. But then I had another baby, and I had to sit down again for another year. He was manipulative, and he started pulling me away from friends and kept me from doing anything socially. I would try to work here and there to support my kids in Colorado and here in New York, but it wasn't easy when he wanted me to be home all the time to keep an eye on me. 3 years after my youngest was born, I went into the shelter with my children for the first time. This began a cycle of me trying to get away, him tracking us down, and eventually convincing me to come back. Every time I thought things would be better, but he always went back to his abusive patterns. Then his mother passed away, and he had to travel back home to Ghana. While he was away, my children from Colorado visited, and it was the best summer ever. I had all my children together, and it was so special. But then he returned a monster. He became physically and mentally abusive. If he couldn't touch me with his hands, he cut me deep with his words. I had to quit my job. I wasn't allowed to speak to my friends anymore. I felt like that same scared little girl I was when my parents divorced. We went back and forth for over a year. I thought he was in mourning and that if I stood beside him, he would see what kind of wonderful woman I was and we could just be happy. I was wrong. I found out I was pregnant again. I was afraid of him becoming physically abusive. I cried for so long. I was surprised I didn't miscarry. I wanted to leave. But then COVID came, and we were forced to stay together. Because of COVID, I was scared to get on the train, let alone go to a shelter, so I stayed. I gave birth completely alone and broken, and I returned home to an abuser, and I knew I had nowhere to turn. The following summer, I tried to leave. I was told I didn't qualify for a domestic violence shelter, and they would place me in a family shelter where he could find my address and bring us back home, so I stayed. In October of 2021, I tried to end my life. I was tired of running. I felt so helpless. I didn't feel like I was a good mother or even a good person. But by the grace of God, I survived. I was hospitalized for over a month, and I discovered I was pregnant with my sixth child. My children were taken away from me, and you guessed it. When I was discharged, I was returned back home. Now, I was told that I was an unfit mother and that I had to work to get my children back. I worked hard, taking classes and putting in the work to show I can care for my kids. After 10 months, my 3 kids were returned home, and I had given birth to my youngest. Only 1 month after they returned home, he beat me in front of my kids and threatened to kill me. This time, I knew I was leaving for good. ACS helped me get into a domestic violence shelter with my 4 children. I was finally ready to stay safe because losing my kids again was not an option. And then I found First Step. The first person I met was Ari. Her upbeat, joyous personality uplifted me so much. I knew I loved being there. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I was really excited. The first day of class, I was so nervous. I didn't know what to expect, but I walked into a room of women and I felt right at home. We immediately started chatting as if we already knew each other, and I can feel the sincerity and love from the First Step staff. I thought, okay, I can do this. I had always felt ashamed of my past, but I was surrounded by women who had challenging stories. I realized I had nothing to be ashamed of. Being a survivor means acknowledging your story and seeing how far you've come. I survived my past, and I'm still here with a stronger foundation and mindset. The staff checked in when they saw I was struggling. I was able to come out of my shell. We learned more about how to deal with emotions at work and how trauma affects our everyday life. I loved all the classes, even the computer classes. I learned things I didn't know, like Google Drive, and things that I apply in the job I have now. My favorite part was the social services workshops. I appreciated having a job coach who was a mother, and it was great to hear the different perspectives from guest speakers. After graduating First Step, I got a job as an administrator at a shelter. When I see people who seem to be having a hard time, I approach them and encourage them to get services. Not only that, but I'm earning my bachelor's degree in human services. I am finally out of the shelter system now. And my 4 younger children and I have our own place, and I am able to have my 2 oldest children come visit me. I am really proud of the relationships I'm able to maintain with my oldest children. My oldest is 19 now, and I'm working on regaining custody of my 15-year-old who still lives with her father. I have friends now and a community. which has allowed me to be able to co-parent effectively with my children's father. I don't know how or why, I just know it was right. I needed first step. I needed that mutual community from my classmates and the uplifting support from the entire staff. When I was going through some hardships, they were right there to encourage me and hold me accountable. My classmates checked in on me. We built genuine friendships. I found Sachet again, the person, not just the mother or friend, but the actual person.